Before the 2012 season, I was very high on the Carolina Panthers. I thought they were going to be a real surprise team. They were going to make the playoffs and shock a lot of people. Well, I ended up being a year ahead of myself. So I came back before the 2013 season. I said, I guarantee it, Carolina is going to win the NFC South. And to start off the season, it sure as hell looked like I was going to look like an idiot. They started off 1-3. People were calling for Ron Rivera's head. It was looking very ugly for the Carolina Panthers. Instead of being a good team that wins games they should lose, they were finding ways to lose games that they should win. But then something happened. Riverboat Ron came on the scene, and the Carolina Panthers finally started to show and meet some of that potential that I had seen in them for a couple of seasons in 2013. Went on that great run the last 3 quarters of the season, ended up making the playoffs, winning the division, and in fact getting a first-round bye in the playoffs before unfortunately losing at home to the San Francisco 49ers in the divisional round. So it's still, I would have to say, would be viewed as a successful season for the Carolina Panthers in 2013. To start off the way that they did, to come back so strong in the second half of the season and win your division, make the playoffs, get a first-round bye, that's something that's encouraging for the future going forward. Riverboat Ron Rivera, the head coach, was able to save his job. But then the offseason happened, and it's been less than a kind offseason, frankly, to the Carolina Panthers. You have the retirement of left tackle Jordan Gross, who's been really a mainstay on that offensive line, protecting the quarterback's blind side for years, all the way going back, frankly, to 2003 when he was a first-round pick out of Utah for this organization. You lose Steve Smith because you cut him. You finally cut ties with the best player in the history of your organization. You lose Captain Munnerlyn to free agency. You lose your other 2 top receivers after Steve Smith and Brandon LaFell and Ted Ginn to free agency. You lose Mike Mitchell to free agency, one of your starting safeties from the 2013 defense. And it just looks like the Carolina Panthers got a whole lot worse in a big hurry. And that's the way, frankly, it looks. So with an organization that won its division, got a first-round playoff bye, made the divisional round of the playoffs, you're surprised to see just how many needs they had heading into this offseason, heading into the 2014 NFL Draft. It was going to be important to me for the Carolina Panthers to be able to address those needs, not necessarily reaching for needs, but be able to address those needs, and in particular, above all else, really make a stand and make a statement behind Cam Newton and say, you're our guy, we ultimately ride or die with you, and we are going to give you more help, more protection, more weapons to work with in the offense. And at the end of the day, you look at the Carolina Panthers 2014 draft results, and you're kind of like, eh. The MO of the previous regime in Carolina for years is that they would hit big on the first-round picks and miss most of the rest of the places in the draft. And it doesn't quite look like that this year compared to some other drafts for the Carolina Panthers. It looks like a little bit more balanced of a draft. But it just was something I was expecting Carolina Panthers to maybe do more, and in particular provide more help to their young franchise quarterback that, with more help, could potentially become an elite quarterback in the NFL in Cameron Newton. Now, in terms of the best pick for the Carolina Panthers, even though I feel it was just a bit of a reach to take a one-year wonder who is 24 years old as a redshirt sophomore coming out of Florida State and Kelvin Benjamin, I will say this is a kid that has tremendous size, that gives Cam Newton that big physical target on the outside that can go up and get the ball, win the tough jump ball situations, make those tough catches that some of the other receivers like the Brandon LaFells and the Steve Smiths and the Ted Ginns, frankly, just couldn't do. So a Kelvin Benjamin, in theory, would seem to fit Cam Newton in the Carolina Panthers offense very well. And it obviously addressed what was easily the biggest need for this Panthers team heading into the offseason, the wide receiver position. You lose your top 3 wide receivers in terms of production for 2013. That becomes a primary need, especially when you are a team with a guy like Cam Newton. He needs help. He has to be sitting there and saying, where the fuck is my help at? Am I expected truly to do this all on my own? That's the way it seems, especially with Carolina's philosophy over the past couple of years. Now, the best pick was Kelvin Benjamin. Maybe the best value, I thought, was Trai Turner, the guard from LSU. I think he's a guy that played left guard or right guard. And to get him towards the tail end of round number 3, where I thought he was maybe a late second to early mid-third round pick, I thought, again, represented pretty good value at that point in time in the draft. Now, some people will sit there and say Kony Ealy, but I wasn't as high on Kony Ealy as others were. In fact, I had him, I believe, as a second to third round pick, so I thought he went about in the draft where he should have. There were teams looking at him as maybe needing to add 15 pounds and playing a 5-technique defensive end in the 3-4, or maybe even putting on that weight and becoming a 3-technique defensive tackle in a cover 2 scheme. I thought the Panthers took a guy right about where he should have. So I don't think it was as big of a value and as big of a steal as people may think it out to be. In terms of a guy, though, that could surprise, I think their 4th-round safety, Tre Boston from North Carolina. Here's a guy that he doesn't overwhelm you with any one thing, but he's solid in a couple of areas, and he has an opportunity to perhaps get some early playing time in Carolina. Good value, again, I guess, solid value if nothing else in the 4th round, and he might have an opportunity to play and play early. Some of the things I second-guessed, though, looking at Kelvin Benjamin, was he really the best receiver on the board? Was he the best receiver for the Carolina Panthers at that point in time? With wide receivers like Marquise Lee and Allen Robinson and who else? Jarvis Landry on the board. There seemed to be, Marquise Lee, Allen Robinson, Paul Richardson, Jarvis Landry. All of these guys I thought maybe would be better suited for Carolina, or some of them you could argue would be better suited for Carolina. And you look at a guy again like Benjamin. Here's a guy with 1 year of production, and the history of guys with 1 year of production at wide receiver coming to the NFL is not all that good. A guy that's 6'5", maybe 240 pounds, getting into that David Boston fat-ass category to where you have to wonder if he will eat himself out of the league like maybe a what Mike Williams did at one point in time. Will he really have the explosiveness and the short area quickness to be able to consistently get separation at the NFL level? A lot of questions with Kelvin Benjamin, even though you see some of the physical potential and upside there. Only 1 wide receiver in this draft. You lose 3 wide receivers via free agency by one means or another, and you only replace them with 1. And you have this draft that is deep and talented and loaded at the wide receiver position, and you only take 1 wide receiver, and the wide receiver you take is a damn near 24-year-old redshirt sophomore with only 1 year of real production at Florida State. That was a bit surprising. I thought they were going to double up on that position, taking either guys in the 1st and 2nd round, similar to what they did with the defensive tackles in Latulele and Short in rounds 1 and 2 in 2013's draft. I thought they were going to go wide receiver, pick round 1 and round 2, maybe Kelvin Benjamin and a Jarvis Landry, something along those lines, or maybe take 1 in round 1 and again in round 3. I was really surprised. I was even more surprised, frankly, that they didn't take a left tackle. Now, maybe they envision Trai Turner as a left tackle at the NFL level. I sure as hell don't see that. I think I see a solid starter at guard. But where was the left tackle prospect? Where was that left tackle that they could have taken? I look again at that 2nd-round pick of Kony Ealy that so many people think was a tremendous value. I understand the philosophy of why they took him there, because they're looking at both Greg Hardy and down the road Charles Johnson coming up for free agency, having to pay both of those guys big time money to keep them, probably only be able to pay one of them if they want to pay either one of them long term. You need somebody like Kony Ealy in the wings ready, but you passed up on protecting Cam Newton by getting that left tackle to replace a guy like Jordan Gross. And to me, I just thought that was a huge, tragic mistake. Especially in this draft, where even at that point in time, at pick number 60, if you weren't going to take one at 28, you had guys at number 60, guys like Billy Turner and Morgan Moses, guys that I think can actually potentially long-term play left tackle at the NFL level. To sit there and pass up and not take a single left tackle in this entire draft again leaves me with less than a positive feeling about the Carolina Panthers draft class of 2014. And overall, I gave them a grade of a C-. I'm not sure Kelvin Benjamin was the best receiver on the board at this point. I didn't think he was the best receiver for the Carolina Panthers to take a pick 28 at that point in time. I think he could work out splendidly, especially with the history of 1st-round picks in Carolina. But the bottom line is they just didn't get enough help for Cam Newton. 3 of their first 5 picks were on the defensive side of the ball. That's not helping Cam Newton. It just isn't. You lose 3 wide receivers in the offseason. You replace them with 1 in the draft. You lose your franchise left tackle to retirement, and you don't replace him in the draft. I just wonder what Carolina expects Cam Newton to do. Do they really just not care about the 2014 season? Do they really want Cam Newton to get the shit kicked out of him and end up with the top 5 pick in 2015's NFL draft? I don't know, but based off of the philosophy of this draft, it sure as hell would seem that way to me anyways.